Hello, class, and welcome once again to Beetle University. I am Professor Moptop, and it is a thrill to be here as always. Thank you very much for always being so supportive and so much fun. It is so nice to talk about the Beatles, and we spent a lot of time talking about the White Album. We spent hours and hours and hours talking about all the White Album. The audio you're going to get is not audio about a specific song this week. There's going to be two parts of a four-part series all about the White Album. It's the White Album wrap-up. It's what I did right after we were all done doing all the songs. Now, there was 4 months of sessions for the White Album, and ultimately that produced 30 new Beatles songs. 12 of them were McCartney songs. What we don't count is that Can You Take Me Back Where I Came Home From part, which is at the very, very end of the Cry Baby Cry, right before Revolution 9 kicks in. John had 13 songs, although one of them was Revolution 9, and one of them was sung by Ringo, which was Goodnight, which would be the last song on the album. George had 4, one per side, and as we said, it was a double album. Now, they weren't totally sure if it should be a double album, and there was certainly some arguments over which songs should be included on the double album. You'll hear about that in the audio you get. It came out in November of 1968, and it's technically just called The Beatles. A lot of people don't realize that it's The Beatles as opposed to the White Album. It came with cool stuff, which was one of the neat things about buying Beatle records, is you would get cool stuff. There's a big poster that was the size of the record, and it's supposed to be folded out as 8 separate frames that would make up this big poster. There were also lyrics, which was always nice. Not a lot of albums had that back then, and they obviously didn't have the internet, where you could Google to hear what people are talking about. There was individual pictures of each of the Beatles as well, and it showed them with facial hair, which was a little bit still of a strange thing for a lot of people in Beatle land. Here is Honey Pie. When they wrote a lot of the songs, it was a lot of acoustic guitars that they wrote them on. A lot of them stayed acoustic. Some of them changed considerably. And they wanted to have a whole bunch of different types of music on it. They range from country to folk to heavy metal to a little bit of calypso to some old-timey music like Honey Pie. That would have been a nice time for Honey Pie to come by. There's some good old-fashioned rock and roll on there as well. It actually starts with some good old-fashioned rock and roll with Back in the USSR. Now, in 1950, there was a live double album by a guy named Benny Goodman. Maybe you've heard of him. And then in 1966, it was when rock and roll was really starting to gain credibility. That's when Blonde and Blonde by Bob Dylan came out, and Freak Out by Frank Zappa and his Mothers of Invention came out. And as we've discussed many, many times before, the Beatles always had the attitude of, if they can do it, we can do it, and we can do it different, and we can do it better. Well, after the debate of the double LP was finally resolved, they decided that they would indeed release it as a double LP. Now, things had changed considerably in Beatle land. Ever since Brian Epstein passed away in 1967, it had been a little bit unusual for the Beatles. 1968 was one of the strangest years they had had so far. One of the big things was they now had to deal with the business side of things too. Apple Records was a major undertaking, and there was a lot of parts involved, and they wanted to learn as much as they could, although they didn't totally know a lot about it. There was some personal changes that happened in 1968 as well. Paul McCartney had been with Jane Asher for several years. She had finally called it quits. Paul dated a woman named Francie Schwartz for a short period of time. And then Linda Eastman, eventually Linda McCartney, came into the picture. John Lennon, of course, got divorced and immediately took up with Yoko Ono, and they were the inseparable couple that they would remain. But throughout these sessions, it was just tense. It wasn't like it usually was. They weren't always recording as a band like they used to. A lot of times they would record a basic track quickly, and then the three of them would individually finish it by adding this or that or mixing it or whatever, but they weren't really unified like they had been in the past. At one point in time, Ringo quit the band. We talked about that a long time ago with Back in the USSR, and as we've said also several times, is George Harrison was just not happy as his current role as a junior Beatle. You'll hear all about that, and as always, I encourage you to listen to the White Album. It gives you a very nice perspective of the Beatles in 1968, which was just as tumultuous and turbulent as it can possibly get. And with that, I'm going to say so long for another week here at Beatle U. I hope everybody out there in YouTube land has a very nice day. Thank you.